Artists, we are going to start a new watercolor project, and our watercolor project is going to be using watercolor pencils and Sharpie to create a drawing. You are going to start with a vase or a pot to put a cactus in. And I gave you a handout with a bunch of different examples of shapes. You do not have to use one of these shapes. You may come up with your own, but these are for inspiration. But I'm going to teach you how to draw these a little bit more three-dimensional. So the very first thing you're going to do when you draw one of these pots is you're going to start with an ellipse. And I'm going to show you on this scrap piece of paper what an ellipse is. And I'm going to show you how you can draw each of these pots three-dimensionally just by using an ellipse. And an ellipse is like an oval, but it's kind of squished. So this is an ellipse. So anytime you start with one of these pots or vases for your cacti, you want to start with an ellipse. If I were doing this shape here, I've started with my ellipse. I can come down on the corners and do the edge of my pot that I see here. And this is kind of coming down on an angle here. Okay, any of these pots will work with the start of an ellipse. It's just a way to help make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So an ellipse is just a squished or flattened oval. You can practice a couple of times. Sometimes I do mine over and over again and then I decide on the best one. It's not a circle, okay? And it's not an oval. It's a squished oval. It's called an ellipse. Okay, so that's what you want to use to start out each of your pots. Okay, now that we know how to start out a pot, I want to talk to you about setting up your paper. The back of this handout has a bunch of different Aztec patterns. I want you to either choose one of these Aztec patterns or you may come up with your own idea, and I want you to create a border on your watercolor paper before we even get started with our drawing of the cacti. So the very first thing you're going to do is use your ruler. And I want you to just use the edge of your ruler, so we don't have to measure inches. We're just going to use that edge. And lightly, because you're going to have to erase some, line up the edge of your ruler with the edge of your paper as best as you can. And give yourself a line, remember, nice and light. And I want you to do this on each of the 4 edges of your paper. So I'm doing it again here. Number 3. Lining them up as best as I can. And 4. Now each of these areas where I have squares in the corner, you may choose to leave those as part of your design, or you may erase them. If you erase these edges, it will look more like a picture frame border. Now that you have done your border placement, I want you to think about where your vase or your pot for your cactus can go. Now we want our cactus to take up a pretty big area here, so I want to start with that ellipse shape somewhere on the lower half. If I imagine that this was half of my paper, I want that ellipse to kind of be down here. If I'm having a short pot or vase, I could go a little bit lower. If I'm having a tall pot or vase, I would want to go a little bit higher. And I'm drawing nice and light so that way I can erase if I need to, but I think that this is probably a pretty good spot for my ellipse. Now I want you to decide which style of vase you're going to do. I think that I like the way that this one looks. So I'm going to try to go for this one. So I'm going to pause it. I have extended my lines down on each side of the ellipse to make that large lip of the pot. And then I have taken my pencil and I have drawn that curved line to kind of match the same angle that I've drawn up there. Now I can come around with the curve of my pot. I'm going to stay inside my barrier, inside my border. Drawing nice and lightly in case I need to erase. And then I can go back in and I can add those lines and details that I really liked in that vase. Now that I've drawn the pot or the vase, I need to decide where the table would be that this is sitting on. We don't want to draw a line up here because that would not leave us a ton of room for the background and the cactus. So I want your table to be below the top of your ellipse. And we don't want it to be so close to the border that we don't have enough room to show the table. So I think that right here would be a good spot. I'm going to imagine where that would line up over here. So now I have the pot sitting on a table. The next step is to draw your cactus. Now you can decide to do one cactus, or if you like a few of these examples, you could draw more than one. Cacti is plural. Now if you want to come up with your own cactus idea, you may, but I left these here so that you could see some examples. I really like the way that this one looks, so I think I'm going to try to copy that shape kind of over here off to the right, and then I might do a different one over on the left. So if I imagine where some dirt or soil might be in my plant, I could just follow this curved line here. So this would be where the soil or the dirt would be. So all of my cactus can come out through here. So if I'm drawing this shape, I can make a nice tall cactus. It can go right outside of my pot. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And I really like the way that those, I don't know, cacti needles look here. But I need to take my eraser and get rid of those lines that are running through my cacti. I don't really want that. And I don't really like right now how the right side of my cacti is so close to the border, and I'm supposed to have a smaller one here. So I'm going to make some edits. I'm drawing nice and light, so I'm allowed to make some edits. I'm going to maybe move it a little bit closer so that I can make this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to take some time and add the needles into that one cacti. So I have enough room for a second plant over here, and I like the way that this one looks. So I'm going to take a minute and try to draw a smaller version of that over here. You really want to pay attention to overlap. I decided I wanted this small plant to go behind the larger cactus, so I made sure that that line was behind. And all of these lines from my vase or pot that are showing, I know that my cactus plant is going to be in front. So I know that I'm going to have to go back in and erase those lines so that I can show that this plant is in front of the back of that pot. I'm going to take a minute and add some of those dots. Now I think I did a pretty good job of filling my space. If I had more room, I could add another cactus behind. I could add more small plants in front if I want, but I'm pretty happy with those two. So now what I'm going to want to do is where that dirt is, I can just leave that blank if I just want to draw brown when I'm adding my watercolor. But if you want it to look like you have some stones or rocks, you can go ahead and fill in some of that background with some shapes to help you look like you have some stones or rocks. Now we're ready to move on to our border. I mentioned that you could draw your own border, but these are kind of Aztec or Southwestern designs to kind of help us go with the theme of a cactus. So I think I'm going to pick one of these. I really like this with the triangles. I might try to do the triangles coming out of the edges and then maybe add some of the circles. So I'm just going to kind of start from the corner, and I'm going to get rid of my edges here because I kind of want it to just look like a border. And I'm just going to go through and add some triangles all along the edge of my paper. And I'm going to pause and catch up. Now that I'm pretty happy with my border, the drawing of my cactus, everything looks the way that I want it to look, I'm now going to go through and outline every pencil line in Sharpie. Now when we use watercolor, we're going to avoid using any black watercolor. So anything that you know you want to be colored in black, you're going to want to do that with the Sharpie. Now that my project is completely outlined in Sharpie, everything that I want black is colored in black, I'm ready to add watercolor pencils. Now these are different than a regular colored pencil because they are water soluble, which means water is going to blend them together. So the very first thing we do is we just color like a normal colored pencil, but the fun part is that you can blend these colors together really easily. You're going to start by using these like a regular colored pencil, and I would recommend that you blend colors together. And what I mean by that is if I want to have this cactus green, I'm going to just color in my areas. Now I do not have to worry about pushing very hard. I don't need to push hard on this because the water at the end is going to blend these. And I don't have to worry about filling up every single little white spot. But the fun part is that I can blend colors together by layering them on top of each other. So I am going to start with that color. If I wanted it to be more of a yellow-green color, I can just layer that yellow right on top of it. And I'm going to continue using these watercolor pencils in all of my areas, not having to completely fill those areas in. It's okay to leave some white, and I'm going to attempt to mix a couple of colors in a few spots. Now that I have completely filled in my color blocking with the watercolor pencils, the final step is to add the water. But what I want you to notice about the watercolor pencil is even though I have white spots showing, I didn't scribble. I was very deliberate in my choices and directions and colors and layers. And that's important because sometimes if you scribble, you'll be able to see those scribbles when you add your water. So the final step is just adding water with a paintbrush. And I would recommend that you start with your lightest colors first. So in my case, the lightest color is yellow. And you can kind of start to see what happens when you add that water right on top of your watercolor pencil is it starts blending. Now, what you want to be careful of when you're using these watercolor pencils with the water, if I had a wet spot right here, and I went to use my orange right now, because they're both wet, they could run and blend together and bleed together. So I recommend starting with your lightest colors first, and I recommend that you would wait for this yellow to dry before you did the orange. So you're going to kind of be working in different spots and in different spaces all around your project, starting from lightest and going to darkest. And because we used a Sharpie, Sharpie is a permanent marker, so it is not water soluble. So that means when water goes over your Sharpie, you do not have to worry about it running or erasing because it is permanent and water will not affect it. So you would just continue on from the lightest color to the darkest color. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and catch up. Now that my yellow has dried, I've been working on my orange, but I'm still taking really good care not to get that wet brush near the yellow because I do not want those colors to blend. I want to show you the really cool effects that happen when you mix two colors together. So for this cactus, I had put down the lime green and the yellow right on top of each other. And as you can see, when they are blended, the water just really blends both of those colors together and it makes a really cool effect. So I like to add more than one color of colored pencil down when I am doing the watercolor pencils. You will know you're done when you have completely covered all of your colored pencil, watercolored pencil with water, and you have created an Aztec or southwestern border with a pot or a vase of cacti inside of it.